12 years after the sentence for genocide in Guatemala committed against the Maya people in exile, on behalf of the Ixil people, we declare. 12 years after the genocide conviction, survivors and those of us who have suffered violence and political persecution during and after the internal armed conflict in Guatemala, we remember and celebrate this date as a step toward understanding the truth about what happened to the Maya people. The historic conviction for genocide of Rios Montt, an army general who de facto ruled the country from 1982 to 1983, marks the first time in 500 years that a court in the same country has convicted one of those responsible for these atrocities suffered by the Mayan people, and in this case, the Ixil people. Because the evidence was clear and conclusive, it wasn't because a court sided with us, but with justice and truth. Although 10 days later, figures from our country's constitutional court overruled it. But not the fact of genocide, but rather an excess of legal technicality, since they had to grasp as something to evade. The responsibility for those who financed and directed the massacre and maintained their impunity. But for the Ixil people and the world, one thing was clear. Genocide was committed against the Ixil people, and those responsible are clearly visible and continue to manipulate the justice system and the institutions of the Guatemalan state as they please. The truth is, the genocide ruling in favor of the Ixil Maya people is irreversible and historic. It was handed down by a court based on the facts and scientific expertise. And those of us who suffered and lived through these acts of cruelty ratify it and do not want it to happen again. The genocide committed by the Guatemalan state against indigenous peoples, financed by the country's economic power, is clear. The economic class that dispossessed us of our best lands believed their interests were threatened. This sector, which has held the state hostage until now, along with organized crime and political parties, has names and surnames, and is the one who has expelled judges, magistrates, prosecutors, lawyers, indigenous leaders, civil society leaders, and journalists. Today, they are brazenly destabilizing the current president and imprisoning indigenous leaders from the 48 cantons and criminalizing the legitimate protests of indigenous peoples. These white-collar criminals don't want anyone to question them. They consider themselves the owners of the country and in the name of democracy and the law. They continue to plunder the state of Guatemala, denying the vast majority of people the opportunity for development, which has led them to poverty, extreme poverty. And they are responsible for the expulsion of thousands of men and women who have abandoned their communities and families in search of opportunities, in search of life itself and their families. They are responsible for the thousands of millions of migrants in this country and in other parts of the world. The struggle of the people and professional sectors are in search of a stop to these criminal acts. To this plunder and corruption, the response has been repression, as occurred in the past and continues to occur today, with the expulsion of their academic, professional, indigenous, and social leaders. Criminalization as a more disguised method, but it is the continuation of the genocide against indigenous peoples. They accused us of being communists and terrorists in the recent past, justifying the massacres they carried out. And today they accuse our indigenous leaders of being terrorists. It is a repression of terror. Therefore, today, in the framework of the 12th anniversary of the genocide verdict against the Ixil people, we denounce from Exile the persecution that indigenous peoples and their community leaders are currently experiencing, as is the case of Luis Pacheco of the 48 cantons and others with arrest warrants. The crime is defending the rule of law and the fight against corruption and the capture of state institutions by organized crime. A clear example of this is the empowerment of the shadowy forces of the public ministry, the high courts and judges. It turns out that those responsible for the persecution of organized crime and those responsible for enforcing the law are the guarantors that this does not happen, and those who dare to challenge them are persecuted. We will continue to fight and denounce the atrocities, but we also want to tell the perpetrators that we are a people full of hope and that we are the tree that when cut down, we grow multiple shoots. Forward, brothers. Let us fight together for the country we want for all. We are migrants. We are exiles, but we remain of the people.